All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This meeting is held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to the orders issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with the open meeting law. During the meeting, there'll be a question and answer session followed by a public hearing. The abutters will have the ability to raise a hand. Please keep the total of your comments to less than 3 minutes. So I need a roll call of the commissioners, and I'll start with Richard.
Here at home.
Okay. Doug. We don't have Doug, right? Okay. Penny.
Here at home.
Jen Foley.
Here at home.
Andy Gallagher.
Here at home.
And Brendan Collins.
Here at home.
Great. Frank Snom at the town hall. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Not that I know of, Frank.
Okay. Could I get an acceptance of the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
Thank you.
Andy.
I get a second on that? Andy?
Yep. Second, Andy.
Okay. All in favor? Start again. Richard? Aye.
Yep. Second. Yep.
Penny?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Frank, yes. Thank you. So we're going to start with
Gonna do the IDAs first, get them out of the way.
do you want to do that?
Well, because I know Maple Street might be long, so it might be nice to let them in and out.
Penny, I don't know why we just don't switch jobs.
I just like to be a helper. I don't want to be in charge. I just want to be a helper.
Right, Frank, actually, the agenda that I gave you did not have them in the order as listed, but we want to go off the agenda online.
So I'm looking at the one on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll go with zero light ship
So
first.
zero light ship. Excuse me. Do I have that to read?
And I believe Doug just joined us as well.
Got it. On Monday, August 17th, 2020, during the 5:15 meeting at the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Nancy Teague for a determination of applicability with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw for activity related to removal of trees and grading at property known as Zero Lightship Lane, Scituate, Mass. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. The information and access virtual meeting will be available on the agenda posted on the town website. Is anybody presenting this?
I am.
Yeah, Nancy Teague.
I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
So you want to tell us what you'd like to do?
We have 3 trees in our backyard that are dying. One is about 75% dead, and the other 2 are rotted in the bottom, and one of them's leaning over, and every storm it leans a little bit more, the roots are coming up. So we wanted to remove them, and that's what we applied to do.
What's the grading?
There is no grading. I don't know why it says that.
Well, actually, there was grading associated with a pool that they had put in earlier in the summer, but the grading that they reestablished is what's shown on this plan.
Hey, there's been other hearings on this project, so that plan might be part of that.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just saying that it said grading. I just wanted to know. So basically, she would just like to remove those 3 trees so they're gonna fall eventually.
Correct.
She doesn't remove them. Okay. Simple.
All right. Anything else you want to add to that, Nancy?
No, no.
Okay.
I submitted pictures when I did the application and everything, so.
Okay. Richard, any questions?
Did you ask me or?
Richard?
Oh,
Richard.
okay.
There we go. No, I don't really have any questions. I assume that the X's on the plan we have here are where the trees are,
Yes,
and they will be immediately removed from the premises.
correct.
That's it. I'm good.
Okay. Doug, you want?
That's helpful. Nope.
Okay. Penny? You've
I'm
already,
just curious, would you like to replant there or you just want to leave it open?
I'd like to leave it open.
Okay.
Jen Foley?
No questions.
Andy?
No questions.
Brendan?
Yeah, no questions.
I don't have any. You've been out to the site, Amy?
I have.
This seems,
Right. Well, so, I mean, this is one of those properties that's cleared right down to the marsh,
Right.
like really right down to the wetlands. So, I mean, I was going to suggest that they replace in kind since it's so close to the buffer, and not stump would be what I would say. But otherwise, I'd say that it can meet the requirements of a negative finding.
okay. Nancy,
Comment?
I had a question. What do you mean not stump? So we're not supposed to grind it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
they're not going to dig the stumps out, but sometimes people will grind them just to get them to grade. Do you ever,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So they could,
Okay.
you could grind the stumps, Nancy, but you can't dig them out.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Penny?
I just want to make just a quick comment that Zero Lighthouse, Lightship Road, that's historically, Amy, they have had that cleared down to the marsh. So it isn't as though it's something new. I mean, I'm going way back to when this piece of property was developed. So I don't know if we really need to ask them to replant because it has been cleared right down to the marsh as long as I've been in town, and that's been many, many years.
I think Amy's point, though, Penny, is that in most cases, if this were to be a developed site now, we'd look to keep some sort of vegetation.
Yeah, so if they were developing it now, but I'm just saying, it is historically always been clear grass right down to the marsh.
But there are 3 trees there now, and I realize that they have to come down for safety reasons. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to plant something in that area. I mean, part of it.
Well, she could argue that she can just wait for the first northeaster to take them out this winter, and then she doesn't even have to bother with us.
It may take out our house as well.
Yeah.
So, Nancy, you've been. You've come before the commission before for other projects. I think you did a Phragmites
We did.
Yeah.
project and things, and we appreciate that. You're trying to do the right thing on your property. I guess allowing you to remove the trees is a good idea. Maybe you could give some thought to some planting there, though. And why don't, in this RDA, we give you permission to dig and plant a series of trees, and then I guess use your discretion as to what you think might work there. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
You'd have to get permission from the commission to dig in that area. So maybe if you are going to do something, just get back to Amy or something. Just let us know. But please give that some consideration because it is a good idea to have some sort of vegetation. A lot of wildlife tries to move between different areas. I know you're up against a road. It's not a real natural woods in that area, but anything planted along that helps. So if you could give that some thought. All right.
Yep.
So I'd take a motion.
Make a motion for -3.
That's Penny.
Second.
Who was that?
That was Doug.
Thank you, Doug. So all in favor, I'm just going to read through. Richard,
What's
Richard,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Penny,
yes?
Jen,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Frank, yes. Great. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. I just had one quick question. Do
Sure.
I need to wait till I get something in writing before I hire a tree company to take them down, or can I just do that?
No, you'll receive the determination in the mail, Nancy.
Oh. Okay, all right, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Do we have another RDA?
Yes. You have 72 Cedar Street.
I got it.
Septic.
On Monday, August 17th, 2020, during the 5:15 meeting at the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Eric Russell for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws for activity related to septic repair on property known as 72 Cedar Street, Scituate, Mass. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Who's presenting this?
I think it's Greg Morse, Frank.
Okay.
Greg, are you on the call?
Yep. So representing the applicant, Greg Morse, Morse Engineering. The property here is located at 72 Cedar Street. For reference, as you look at the plan here on the screen, Cedar Street's at the bottom of the screen. The wetlands that we have here, we have wetlands on the opposite side of Cedar Street with a 100-foot buffer zone that extends into the front yard of this house. We also have wetlands at the rear of the property, which is at the top of the screen. Those are in blue. Again, with the 100-foot buffer in green extending into the backyard of this property. The existing septic system here is located on the right side of where the house is located at the front of the lot. And it fails a Title V inspection. Our proposal is to construct a new septic system. The new septic system would be a septic tank and a pump chamber, pumping back to a leaching chamber bed. The leaching chamber bed is in the rear yard. You can see it kind of in the middle of the screen at the top of the page. It's an elevated system. It's approximately a 4-foot high mounded septic system. The location that we selected here, this is an area that's existing lawn grass. It would be restored as lawn grass. There are no trees that would be taken down with this septic system being installed. All of the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, and it's not an increase in flow. It's simply an update of the existing failed system. I turn it over to you.
Richard, do you have any questions?
No, a little bit of it is in the 100-foot. Am I correct, Greg?
A lot of it.
The leaching
leaching
system
field.
itself is inside the 100-foot.
Right,
The-
right.
The tanks are outside, but the leaching system is inside the 100.
Okay, that's all for now.
Doug?
I'm guessing weren't able to perk anything up closer outside the 100-foot, Greg.
So outside the 100 there, it's relatively flat topography.
Yeah.
And this
Oh, yeah.
lot
So we
here,
couldn't get it gravity then either.
so
yeah.
you couldn't get it gravity, and groundwater at this site is relatively high. So we are talking a 4 to 5 foot high mound. So we
Yeah,
wanted to make
yeah.
sure there was adequate distance between the building and the proposed mound so that we didn't create a negative drainage situation.
Gotcha.
So we kind of pushed it back to the edge of the existing field lawn that's in the back of the house.
Okay. Yeah. I see that now. Yeah, that comes out of the ground quite a bit there.
It does.
Yeah. And you've got a liner all around it too. I see it's about as small as you can make it. So yeah, no other questions.
Penny?
Nope, that was my question, to pull it closer to the house, but if he can't, he can't.
Okay. Jen?
I'm good.
Andy?
No questions.
Brendan?
And no questions.
Amy?
No, I mean, I think it's definitely going to be an improvement. So I would say that we should vote on the negative determination.
Do we have anybody, audience for this? Put their hand up. No? Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone is.
Seeing none.
Yeah, I'm fairly familiar with this site, and I don't really see that there'd be another opportunity to put it somewhere else, so. Okay, so I take a motion for determination, Penny.
I make a motion for a -3.
Do I have a second?
Second, Richard.
Great. So all in favor, Richard,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Penny,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Frank, yes. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
So now we're on to, we doing River Street or Maple Street?
Why don't we do River and get her over?
All right. Can I read River Street? So we're just gonna do River Street first, since this should be fairly straightforward, and then we'll move to Maple Street. On August 17th, 2020, 5:15 p.m. the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Alan Garcia to replace bulkhead and construct new gangway and float system at location 138 River Street, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access virtual meeting will be available through the agenda posted at the website. Okay, who's doing this?
My name is
We've got
Richard
Rick.
Savant,
Yeah.
with Stenbeck and Taylor. Yep.
I'm sorry, your name again?
Richard Savant.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
So why don't you fill us in?
Okay. So 138 River Street. You may remember this project. We were recently approved late last year for a new house up on elevated on wooden piles. That was under SE 682846. This is a bulkhead replacement. Of course, it abuts the South River. We have an existing, I call it a bulkhead. It's a wood retaining wall that's existing out behind the house. The applicant would like to replace that wall in kind in the same location with the new wood bulkhead. It will consist of driven wooden piles and vertical marine grade boards with horizontal bracing. Pretty typical revetment style for, something against a body of water like this. You can see the detail at the top of the page. We have driven wooden piles about 8 feet apart with this vertical slatting that's all bolted together. South Shore Pile Driving is going to be doing the work. We'll be driving the piles. Again, we're proposing to replace it in the same location as the existing wall that's there. The existing wall, if you've been out there, it's kind of rotted and decaying. And just in order to protect the new home here, the applicant would like to replace that. Secondly, we're proposing, we'll be pursuing a Chapter 91 license for this project.
Yeah.
So at the same time, we've got a gangway shown, a 16 by 3 foot gangway and a small 192 square foot float. It's a 16 by 12 with, it's got some control piles on the corner, wooden piles to, keep the float in position. The float will also have legs on the bottom to prevent it from sitting on the tidal flat during a low tide situation. That's essentially the project. Replace the existing bulkhead with a new one and permit a new gangway and float. The float is essentially this, as you know, the area. It's not a deep water float setup. It's only going to be used for kayaks and dinghies, small craft like that. There wouldn't be any larger boats that would be able to utilize this thing. It would be on the legs, during mid to low tide situations. So that's generally what we're hoping to do, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Richard?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's all right.
Yeah.
On the vertical boards, that's tongue and groove, so there's no space between them. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the intention. They will be tight together.
I guess my question, I guess I would ask Amy. I mean, is that something that we normally would allow? I mean, that acts as a barrier.
Yeah, that's not something we see very often, Rich. And I think that probably that will be specified in the Chapter 91 license through that permitting.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
If I could just comment on that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, typically, the wall, I haven't seen them with spacing. It would cause a lot of erosion behind the wall if you're allowed to have any wave action or anything getting through the boards. To the north, we have a concrete wall, concrete wood wall, and several to the north of that. To the south of us, we have a very similar type of wood wall that's boards are tight together. And as you know, obviously a concrete wall doesn't have any gapping in it. I think erosion would be a big problem if there were spaces in between those vertical boards.
Okay. Doug?
My only question, I'm guessing that the DEP gets the bite at the apple as far as structural integrity is concerned, because and that is my only question, that there's kind of little details on this, but I don't know enough about structures like this to be familiar enough with them on how typical construction is done. Certainly driven wood piles is going to be adequate, but what you're just talking about, the vertical boards, that's my only concern, is if they're going to hold back water, or is the structural integrity there so that they're not breaking apart earlier. And I'm sure that they are. I'm just admitting my lack of expertise in that area, and I'm wondering who makes that call, if that's the DEP or somewhere else along the way.
Yeah, I think it's a Chapter 91.
I figured as much. So they'll take a look at that, and they'll ensure that whatever's being built is going to withstand reasonable wear and tear. So, but that's my only question about it.
Can I make a comment on that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So I may have neglected to say, a very important part of this is, along with the vertical boards, there is large horizontal timbers shown in the diagrams up above. They're actually 3-inch by 8-inch. I'm sorry, 6 to 8. Forgive me, I can't see the screen very clearly. But they're a large horizontal connectors between these piles, that are bolted through the piles. The vertical boards are also be bolted to those large, heavy horizontal bracing that's between the piles. So I know you can't see me pointing to the screen here, but there is large through-bolted horizontal connectors between each pile. That's the main support. Behind that is the verticals that are also vibrated into the ground. Behind both the pile and that large horizontal is the 3-inch vertical, the tongue and groove verticals that are vibrated into the ground. So
Gotcha.
there is quite a bit of structural, and those will be bolted to those horizontals. So that, and you're absolutely right. I have had an initial review of this with Dave Hill at DEP, and we will certainly be reviewing all aspects of this project as we move forward, certainly with all the design criteria they'll be reviewing.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Those are 4-inch by 8-inch horizontal braces. So 4 inches thick, 8 inches wide, pretty substantial with large galvanized through bolts connecting between the piles. Then the verticals are behind those, attached to those horizontal braces.
Okay. Penny?
Reminiscent of 240, Frank, down the street.
Trying to remember what's there at 240.
240, same thing. They put the boards up, the high tide to keep the tide out. We've been back and forth, back and forth. It's never been solved. Down the end of the road, keep going right at the end before you get to the last house.
Yeah,
It'll be right
Great
next to
Penny's right.
controversy.
Penny's right. It's the last house.
Yeah, 240, never was, and I don't see on this plan any high water mark. I don't know where the high water is.
It's there.
Well, let's if that's a question, Penny, let the engineer give
Yeah,
us.
I just, I'm a little concerned about this.
Okay,
I don't
Penny,
want to
so-
get in the same mess we did years ago.
Okay, so you can see here, I keep moving my cursor around like you can see it.
Yeah.
Forgive me. See, it's on the bottom of the page in the blue, the mean high water line. The mean high water line is elevation 4.3.
Oh, I see it
And
now.
it
Yeah.
runs along, it's blue line that runs along the face of this bulkhead. So the high water line is created by the existing bulkhead that's there.
Yeah,
So it is there.
and it is
I
stopping
think-
water. Yeah.
I mean, there's land there. I mean, there's an existing bulkhead there that I guess acts in that fashion. It's at the high tide, just like other retaining walls that are there, but it holds land behind it. But the high tide does come up to the wall, on a daily basis. And I think you might have been thinking about 140 to the south of us, Penny. That's the last house.
To the south. Maybe it is 140. It's the last house on the
Yeah,
road.
that's 140. That's just abuts us to the south. They have a wood wall, not similar to ours. Ours is going to be much more substantial with the driven piles and the bracing and so forth. But yes, that is just to the south of us, and that wood timber wall wraps around 140 there. Yep, that's correct.
I just know it was a great controversy, but if you go through 91 and they say it's okay, then I'm okay. So I have another question. On your plan here, it says proposed seasonal. Does that mean that you will be taking the gangway and the float out in the winter?
That is correct. That will be
Okay.
coming out in the winter.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. I just hope that 91 takes care of because we got in a real mess down there and it's never been resolved to my knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen?
I'm not sure if I wasn't paying attention and missed it, but can you speak to rebuilding the existing steps?
So yes, there are existing stairs that are there now. We're just proposing to replace those steps. The wall in this area, and I'm guessing you guys have been out to the site. It's not a high wall. It's flush with the ground. It's flush in areas and about a foot above grade in others. And there's just 2 steps going down into the water that are there now. The applicant would like to just basically replace those stairs with a new set of stairs that's connected to this new bulkhead in the same position.
But what would you have them made of?
They would be wood. There would be wood stairs. I don't have any design criteria on the stairs. The stairs are there, just a couple of, they'd be constructed properly, but I don't have any design details on the stairs. But there will be wood, pressure treated wood, a marine grade. But I believe they'd just be connected to the bulkhead and then setting on feet that sit on the, at grade.
I'd definitely be interested in seeing some proposed designs for that
Okay.
before kind of moving forward.
Sure, we can certainly do that.
Anything else, Jen?
Nope.
Andy?
No, I think everyone asked what I was looking at for now.
Okay. Brendan?
Yeah, same as Andy. All my questions have been addressed.
Okay. Amy?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's definitely a project that we don't see, it's not common that we see projects that are bulkhead rebuilds. And if there is a bulkhead, usually there's a permit that precedes the application and filing. But they're filing for a 91 license with this repair and then to add the gangway and the float. But I don't think that the original bulkhead was permitted through 91. So I will be interested to see what their comments are and how this works through their process. I know that one of the comments originally from them was that they were happy to see this go through the permitting process. So I think there should be some kind of give and take. As far as the Southeast Regional Office, the Wetlands Office, they did not particularly flag this other than it needs to have a 91 license. So I think that the main review will be at that level. And one of the components, and even to apply really for the license, is an order. So, I mean, I guess that we could close with conditions and kick it down to the state, or we could continue pending revisions for additional design details that you think are missing. I mean, things that caught my eye would be, it's not common that I've seen support legs on floats before, and it's just interesting that there's this bulkhead that it's not clear the permitting steps that were taken in order to build that in the first place. So perhaps it predates the act. I'm not sure, but those would be my thoughts.
Okay. Alan, do you want to, do you want to comment on some of Amy's comments?
Sure. So the float with the legs, that is fairly common. We're not allowed to let the float sit on the bottom for shellfish purposes. So they do, and that was a suggestion from Dave, which I was aware of anyway, but speaking with Dave Hill about it, just acknowledge that it needs to be supported off of the mud flat, the tidal flat. And I agree with Amy. I don't believe that there was I cannot find an existing license for that said bulkhead that's there. I spoke to Dave about it. He suggested, unless we could produce some documentation, I forget the cutoff date, but we had rock solid evidence before a certain date. It could be grandfathered and you wouldn't have to get a permit to do this repair. Without that, he suggested, unless you have that, just file for a new license to make it right. So I did speak to the applicant about it. We know that it's been there quite a long time, at least into the 80s, but we certainly don't have old photos and family stuff that documents that how that arrived there.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
Just for Amy, up and down the river, there are several floats. that are on legs, and most of them are seasonal. Most of them are pulled out in the late fall through the winter. So it is not uncommon along this river in Humrock.
Yeah, and you know what? It's just maybe I don't see it called out like it is on this plan. Because you're right, probably all floats have legs. I just don't usually see it called out like this.
It's
I'm
not
not sure.
It's not new along the South River.
Thanks, Rich.
A couple of questions. So, Richard, the elevation of the top of that wall, is that 6.3?
That is correct.
Okay.
Top of yes, that is correct.
So that means that that's going to, on the filled side, it's about 1.5 feet higher than the grade. And
It's
then
about 2.5 feet higher than the grade
on the
house side.
On the house side.
Yep. The existing grade averages at about 4. Top of the bulkhead. Maybe it's just the term I use, bulkhead. It's a retaining wall.
Yeah.
I call them bulkheads.
Well, the way it's driven, that's typical. I mean, it's not uncommon that would be like steel either, and they call it a bulkhead. So
That's correct. So, yep, that's right, Frank. It's about 2.3 feet above the grade on the house side. That's correct.
okay, and then so it's about 3.5 feet higher on the riverside. Depending on where we are.
Yeah, that's right. It varies a little, but yeah, generally, that's correct.
And is that consistent with what's there now?
Very consistent. It's, as you can saw from the photos, it's variable. It's there now, but it's not. It's slightly higher, but the high water mark is 4.3, and the top of the wall is proposed at 6.3. The wall that's there is about elevation 5.
Okay. Is there anything, obviously all the material that's being pulled up is going to get disposed of off-site. Is there any means or methods with this, how they intend to do this?
Yes. So what we're intending to do is kind of a daily cycle, daily sections to be removed and replaced in 1 day's time. And erosion control put in place, a section, whatever the contractor, and again, it's from South Shore Pile Driving, is going to be doing the work. They're only going to remove, during the tide cycle, of course, when the tide's out, they'll put a silt sock in place and they'll replace a section of the wall that they can remove and replace that section in that given tide cycle. And then bring it back, stabilize everything for the tide and the next work thing. So it'll be phases. I can't say how many they'd be able to do in a day, but I would anticipate they'd be able to do 3 or 4 piles in a day, stabilize it, with silt sock, remove the rotted sections and replace. That's the format. I would anticipate, like a week or something to do this, but that's what I would anticipate. But they are planning on, that's the method of construction.
Okay. Maybe, so I didn't read the application. I'm just looking at this space between the property line and the house. There's a shed on one side and the deck on the other. So they must have made some provision to get in there on someone else's property.
Actually, that's a good point, Frank. That's kind of why we've been pursuing this. And why he hasn't started construction on the house, which South Shore Pile Driving will be driving the piles on the house when that happens.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, we're going to work from the wall and work our way out. Obviously, with this whole COVID thing, is set this back quite a bit. But that was the original intention, was to work our way out.
Okay, so this will go in before the house is done.
Yeah, and because of the scheduling problems that we've had, that was, like I said, the original intent. But still, yes, they're not going to be able, at the very least, they're going to leave the deck off and leave some piles up so they can still get in there. So we don't have to worry about access to somebody else's property. So, yes, we'll be leaving some of the piles out so he can get back there.
Okay. So, Amy, back to your point, do we close this with conditions like Jen's question for detail on the stairs, which I think could be added?
Yeah.
And then it's really going to be flipped over to Chapter 91.
Yeah.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I'd rather close it if we could.
I agree.
I don't hear any objections. So I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Jen. Any abutters, anybody else interested in this?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand, please. Okay,
Seeing none.
don't see any, so I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to close.
With conditions,
Yeah, with conditions.
I can second that.
Thank you, Richard. So all in favor, Richard,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Penny,
Yeah,
Jen,
Yep.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan.
Yes.
Great, and I'm Frank, yes. Amy?
Let's also make a motion to issue. Also.
we did. I make a motion to issue conditions.
Richard seconds.
Okay, Richard. For vote,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Penny,
Yep,
Jen, Andy,
Yes.
Brendan.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so now we're at 132 Maple Street.
well, we're never gonna get.
Penny, keep your comments to yourself, please, or mute yourself.
Didn't say anything.
On August 17, 2020 at 5:15, the Town Hall, Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws, and Section 32050, Town of Situate Stormwater Bylaw, regarding the application of Joseph and Christine Pans of Traverdene, Florida, to construct approximately 220 lineal foot driveway over an existing cart path for access to inner portion of property, to construct a 30 by 60 barn with full utilities, including water and septic, gravel yard, surrounding the barn and stormwater infiltration system at 132 Maple Street, Scituate, Mass. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access a virtual meeting will be available on the agenda posted to the town website. Okay. And who's presenting this?
I think it was going to be Bill, maybe?
Yeah, this is Bill Orenberger. I just want to introduce on the call here Gary James, our engineer, and Chris Newhall, wetland scientist, as well as the owner, Joe Pants. His wife, Christine, isn't available. And I know the history of this, and I'm relatively new to the history. I've been working with my clients to get something that is what we think is a good use of the project. One of the prior things, but we'll get right to the point, I'll let Gary and Chris get into this, is this advocates doing improvements to the existing cart path and to do the work related to that, as opposed to cutting and filling a substantial access way along the northerly boundary line of the property, in consideration of privacy, tree cutting, and all those kind of things. So at this juncture, Gary or Chris, why don't you describe the plan?
This is quite a departure from the original one, although this is pretty close to what we had originally presented.
This is Gary speaking, correct?
Yes, this is Gary. I'm sorry, I thought Bill introduced me, but yes, this is Gary James. I'm the engineer on site for this project. As Bill stated, our intent specifically was to utilize the existing cart path pretty much for access. The barn is pretty much now been moved up away, and it's almost in its entirety outside the limits of the buffer. The activity within the limits of the buffer is pretty much limited to just the access way. and a little bit of grading associated with the side slopes coming off of the subsurface infiltration system. We will be meeting stormwater. We'll be meeting all of the stormwater requirements of the under the bylaw in terms of the providing for 90% TSS removal. So you will actually be getting, I believe, based on the TSS calcs, we're actually going to get up to like 95, 96%. The septic system in and of itself is well outside the 100-foot buffer, including the reserve area. Even the grading is pretty much outside the 100-foot buffer. The improvements to the cart path will be limited pretty much to just removing whatever bits of topsoil are sitting on the top of it, probably somewhere in the range of about 6 inches, and just replacing it with stone to stabilize it. As Bill stated, somewhere in a range of about 1,800 square feet is currently within the limits of the wetlands. And as we stated, we don't really have a replication area at this point. I believe we have had some staff meetings with both the chair and the agent. And I guess the intent was either specifically to provide a set aside on some of the site or provide monetary. But if you really do want a replication area, we do have an area that we could propose for it. But at that, maybe that's a point for a discussion rather than me to present it.
Amy, do you want to comment on that?
Well, yeah, actually. So that, Gary, that was the presentation of the project.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll slip to the next slide, which is just the site plan.
Excuse me 1 second.
Mhm.
Did Chris Newhall want to comment on this at all?
This is Chris Newhall. You know, the only comment I have at this time is that I did meet with the commission's third-party consultant, Ecotech, out in the field on, I believe it was May. I don't have the exact date, but it was in May, and we reviewed some wetland boundary revisions that Art Allen had previously called out in his comment letter to the commission, and those wetland boundary revisions, I think, were then reviewed in the field by the entire by Art and myself, and we agreed on those boundaries.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. And so just, we've got Art on the call. And so I just wanted to probably turn it over to Art. Like Gary said, we've gone back and forth quite a bit, but we definitely, we've agreed on the resource areas at this point. And the plan that we have up right now, I highlighted just to illustrate a little bit clear, not more clear, but it's just, there's a lot going on the main plan. So in the red is the wetland area, with the green line being the 50-foot buffer line, and the project area is highlighted in yellow, with the pink, which is where you can see it crosses in 3 locations through the resource area. So I think that those are probably the areas that we should be discussing. But anyways, I did want to turn it over to Art for a recap of where we stand.
And I just want everybody to understand this has been going on for a fair amount of time. There was a hearing before this, and then things changed, so we re-advertised a new hearing. And typically we go to members, but I'd rather get input from Art Allen, our consultant, on this before we get questions from commission members. All right? So Art, if you would like to speak to this.
Can everybody hear me? Art Allen from Ecotech.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. So again, I'm the commission's peer review consultant, professional wetland scientist from Worcester, Massachusetts. My first visit to the site was October 7th of 2019. Made some comments about the wetland boundaries and the project as originally filed. There were, as Chris noted, there were some revisions made, some back and forth correspondence, and then we visited the site together on May 12th of this year. I made some follow-up comments, and then and noted also, as Chris noted, that I was in agreement with all of the revised delineations made to the plans. Just had to throw a cat out of the room. Yeah, I'm sure we're all familiar. So at this point, the plan in front of you now with the revisions does show a complete picture of the wetland boundaries that I've reviewed, as well as kind of the locations of existing conditions on the site. Basically, we're down to, from my original comments, really down to two main areas. One of them relatively minor, the vicinity of flags A2 to A3, near that existing ponding area down by Maple Street. I had originally noted some debris and wood piled outside of the cleared area in the wetland, and I recommended that those be removed and that area be restored. Subsequently noted that that area is also, an existing disturbed area that might be suitable for wetland replication to meet performance standards for the proposed upgrade of the cart path, if that's approved. That was one of the things I suggested as an on-site option for wetland replication. The other main area of concern, probably more significant, is the proposed upgrade of the cart path to serve as a permanent, driveway access for the new barn structure. At this point, they're proposing to essentially harden that cart path at grade and allow the wetland and a flow in the wetland to just go over the cart path. And I've stated several times now that, in my opinion, that's, I don't see that as an adequate, way to construct a permanent driveway. There'll potentially be icing problems in the winter, ongoing maintenance problems. With that driveway, they also propose to put utilities in there, so any future maintenance or work on the utilities, they'd essentially be, digging in the wetland with nothing to, with basically no upland area, associated with that portion of the cart path. So my opinion, continues to be that if this driveway were to be properly constructed and permitted, it would be raised, and a series of cross culverts would be provided, and that footprint of the disturbed area would be mitigated as required by the regulations on site, in terms of one-to-one replication to impact area square footage wise. So that's pretty much what we're down to. I know the applicant's representative has stated that they want to put their proposal in front of the commission and let them make the decision, which is their purview, but that's just my feedback.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art.
Mr. Chairman, the Bill Arbor, can I jump in here because I might be able to save a little time?
Sure.
Yeah, as far as Chris and Gary have looked and listened to Art's recommendations, and Chris, I don't know if you or Gary, if you want to talk to, I think it's 1,800 square feet of replication, and as Art pointed out, near flags 1 and 2, he thinks it's a disturbed area, and that's something to be willing to do. Okay, so that takes that one off the board. Secondly, Chris, why don't you, or Gary, why don't you speak to, as far as putting, albeit they have about sheeting of the water across that. We hear what Art says. They have some opinions on that, but nevertheless, we came up with some culverting, which I think would address the concerns that Art had. So, Chris or Gary, why don't you tell us what your plans are for that?
Right here. Well, yeah, I'm using my pointer. Of course, you can't see it. Right near the second crossing in front of it, about wetland flags number A9 and A10. That area, when you look at it, is pretty scrubby. There aren't any real significant trees in there, and there's certainly the opportunity for us to be able to put some replication area in there to remove in fact, there's quite a few invasives that are in there. The other thing, too, is that we'd be out of the wetlands, so we would have the ability to be able to put the culvert in there and actually provide some hydrologic flow across this wetland area to be able to sustain it. So that's one of the options. The other option is that to the far end of it, on the second crossing, I mean, every time I've been there, it's been nothing more than just a trickle. And we can certainly put in 2 or 3 6-inch culverts or 2 or 3 8-inch culverts with some very, very minor, and make sure that they're strong enough that they can withstand shallow cover depths, and just bring it down to about 6 inches of cover. Even if we had to go to Schedule 80, and certainly have the ability to be able to put the culverts in. And as I stated, every time I've been here, there's been nothing more than a trickle. I mean, went down to less than 1/10 of a CFS. So it's a pretty wide crossing, but if we go with something smaller, it'll take the smaller events, but the larger events will still go over the top, because it's probably about an 18 to a 20-foot wide swath there where the water comes down between the two houses up above us. If you look at that where the tree line is, right, and the common drive, that's pretty much the discharge point for when it comes off of those common drives. It just comes through the wall right in there, and what it does is it crosses right in there. But the upper area where we're proposing the replication, that comes in off of the street or off of the front of the house at 118, and certainly we can redirect that, and that would maintain that vegetation of that replication area over in that. And 1,700 is not a big area in that. There's about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet in there that we could easily even do it even within the limits of the Zone A. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair. Go ahead, Frank.
I guess I'm going to deflect to Art on that one. Do you have any other comments on those thoughts, Art?
It sounds like they're coming maybe halfway to what I'm recommending. It sounds like they're not talking about, constructing a full height driveway, that is completely up out of the wetland there. Sounds like they're talking about a low elevation driveway that passes low flows under it and high flows over it. Still not something that I've really seen before. I mean, except on the old, farm crossings and things that were built at grade. But I have not personally, in 25 years, seen any new, permanent driveways constructed that way. Maybe Chris, I'd like to get Chris's feedback. I know he's been in the business for a while and he's a professional wetland scientist. So maybe I'd like to hear what Chris has to say about this proposal.
Can you comment on that, Chris?
Yeah, I guess my comments are that, this is an existing, cart path, on-site access drive, road, whatever you'd like to term it. It does have some existing, like 3/4 inch crust gravel, at the surface. During the wetland delineation, there were areas where, water essentially was ponding within the wetland that's, that road runs through. It was, flowing, I guess, very slowly over the top. There was no channelized flow or anything like that. It was really, again, drainage patterns within a wetland type of flow pattern through this area. As far as a road. I'm not a civil engineer, so I can't comment on that. Obviously, for a wetland, and for performance standards, you do need to maintain hydraulic continuity so that you can maintain those flows. So, that really kind of gets more into, again, civil engineering than wetland scientists. But as long as flows are maintained, from upstream to downstream, you won't be affecting one side of the wetland versus the other.
Okay. I'm assuming that whatever you're proposing, we're going to get some sort of proposal, drawing, sketch of that for us to approve or to review.
Well, I think, Frank, it would be helpful for the commission members to weigh in so that we can give the applicant clear direction of our thoughts on their possible proposal.
I think that's the next piece of it. I just want to be sure whatever we're going to get, but I guess so. The applicant all along has been looking for feedback from the commission. To Mr. Ornberger's point, there was discussion about two means of access to get to this site, and after site meetings, several of the members have been out to the site. We've been there a few times now, electing to use the cart path, and then a way that that can be done in a I guess a simpler fashion is what the applicant's looking for. So yes, I would like to know. I think everybody's familiar with this, so we could run through comments from the commissioners. Richard?
Well, I actually like the idea of using the cart path as opposed to the other alternatives, but we certainly need revised drawings if any changes that they're going to make before we could seriously consider it any further. And I also like to know more about the mitigation that they mentioned they might be able to have.
Okay. Doug?
Well, not trying to be a devil's advocate or make you revisit an issue that you already have. But when I look at this, and I understand the desire to use the existing cart path. So one of the questions I have is that does the existing cart path service anything beyond that the electric easement back there? So that's one question. It just sort of looks like it kind of just tapers off, kind of ends. But coming off the cart path, then there's going to be a proposed new driveway to get up to the barn. And is the purpose of this very singular and it's just access to the barn, private access to the barn, or would the general public be traveling on this for any other reason?
If I can answer that for the commission, this is just private. There's no public access contemplated here. And it's strictly for access to get up to the barn, period.
Okay. So, and you may have already looked at this, and so you may have good reason not to do this, but I guess when I look at that, I consider moving, basically abandoning the existing cart path and not using that and putting something north of not the abutting stone wall, but that internal stone wall. Somewhere along there, it would enter around flag A15 up to the that little stone wall around A21, and access to the barn that way. And then that area that was disturbed, replicating that at the way normal replications are done, abandoning the cart path altogether and making that so you're not interrupting a hydraulic connection, because that driveway is going to now be up above in wetlands instead of trying to service something that is going to have water flowing over the top of it from time to time. So that, and again, you may have already looked at that and come up with a good reason not to do that. I know that there would be some tree clearing along that edge, but the owner of house number 112 is now going to be looking at a barn. That is all going to be cleared. So the optics of it don't seem to me that gets any worse by having that driveway up there. And it again, while I'm looking at it, it looks like a better connection for the wetlands to remain whole and replicate it. There's plenty of areas towards the back there to make a larger wetland area. So I'm just wondering what the thought process was about that, as opposed to using the existing cart path.
Maybe can Gary? There was actually, Doug, a plan, another plan proposed showing that road being built on that upper area closer to the neighbors, and I think the discussion was that it would create the removal of a lot of trees, and by the time you cleared it out and create it, but I'd rather let Gary comment on that if you would, or Bill.
Gary, do you want to take that?
Hello again, this is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, Dr. Shiva running for U.S. Senator.
A commercial.
Somebody's got the television on.
Well, and if you've already reiterated this, I mean, I trust that this has already been asked and answered, and I apologize if I asked you to repeat something that you've already done, so you don't really have to go through that. If the commission
Doug,
is already...
This Bill Arnberg, if I can jump into this, I'm new to this, but I've studied all this. For a bucolic area like this, to have the least disturbance, this is the best plan that there is. There's a lot of cut and fill if you're going to get to the top there. And the second thing I'd ask Chris, if you had a driveway and you had it there, isn't that going to substantially reduce the water that's coming across the existing cart path?
That is to say, if you were to install a driveway on the north side of this internal stone wall that Doug's referenced.
Right.
I mean, theoretically, you'd be having to cut that, so water would be either coming down onto the road, but so it would likely need to be managed somehow. So you would need to probably put in some type of a swale. But again, I'm not a stormwater engineer either. That's a civil engineer's purview. So I can't really comment more than you would require a lot of tree clearing. And if you're putting in asphalt and things like that, you're sort of increasing runoff as well.
Yeah. Actually, and Gary, this Bill again, you can speak to this, is the answer, Doug, is this was looked at. We really think this is the least intrusive thing. In other words, willing to do the replication. In addition to that, willing to put some culverts as recommended here, albeit may there still be some moisture going over the top of this, yes, but I think they can get a good handle on dealing with that, and maybe it's possible we can do a little other mitigation relating to this. But I think everyone is, from a stormwater standpoint, from, as Gary said, and everything else, I think this is the least intrusive, in the interest of the act, the best option that we have. So I think step one of what Art had recommended, we need replication done. We're going to do that. We will submit to the commission a replication plan for Art's review and for the commission's review to make sure that that's copacetic. We'll put some culverts in here that are appropriate to handle this. Might it handle 100% of it? No. But I think it'd be Gary, I'm correct in saying that putting some culverts in will be a appreciable improvement to the existing conditions that we're proposing.
The real issue here is I'm trying to balance stormwater control as opposed to not trying to concentrate the flow pattern coming off of the site. Because right now you're seeing a tremendous amount of sheet flow going over the top, and I'm trying to maintain that. Whereas if I raise this road up and create a conventional culvert crossing, then essentially what I'm doing, you're asking me to dam it up and concentrate the flow. So if I do that, I'm gonna change the hydraulics. So I'm trying to create a balance where, yeah, I want to get across the wetlands. I want to utilize the cart path because we don't have to clear a single tree. I think that the worst that we have to do is clear out. I think there's a double 3-inch tree. That's about it. Maybe cut some brush back and then put this in. But I don't want to change the overall runoff pattern or concentrate the flows, because my gut reaction is that I'm probably going to end up drying up some of these wetlands around this perimeter if I do something of that nature. So that's kind of why I really don't want to build it up that high. And that's the other reason why we're using the stone, to make sure that the water will actually flow through. So if I do get those sheet flow periods, it should flow through the stone rather than flow over the top of it. And it's an unusual situation. It's very unusual.
Doug, do you think you've got enough answers to your question?
Yeah, because that's my thought. If you put a culvert in there, you're gonna have to raise the grade and you're gonna have to fill the side slopes. And if you're gonna do that, it just seems less disruptive to the wetlands to move it. But I respect the fact that everybody's hashed that out and have decided that that's probably the least disruptive. And it's so obvious, it would have surprised me if somebody hadn't looked at that avenue of heading in that other direction. I mean, north of that. But no, thanks for the answers. It's tight, and that new driveway coming in is fairly steep, going up the side fill around the stormwater control. So there's going to be water coming down that, and I'm not sure how we control that. And I agree with Gary about not concentrating flows and starting to cause erosion down in those areas. So it's a tough build out, squeezing something back in that little corner. And but I'll rest my questions there.
Okay, thanks. Penny? Thank you, Doug.
We've had a drought, we all know that, but it's still mucky out there. So that is a very heavy crossing of the wetlands. We were out there, 2-3 weeks ago, Frank? It wasn't that long ago, and it was still very mucky. I'm leaning more toward what Art wants to do and raise the road up there. Tons of gravel, raise it up and put the pipes in to make sure the water gets. I don't like the idea of the water getting on top. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I know in other places around town we've had to raise the roads up, put the culverts in so the water could flow through. Maybe we have to put 4 pipes across that crossing. I don't like the idea at all of water going over the top. So that's just my opinion.
Okay. Jen?
I share a lot of the sentiments that have already been kind of discussed, but I think maybe Rich said this earlier, it's a little hard to truly provide a lot of an opinion when so much new information was brought up right at the moment we started to discuss this. So discussing potential replication or where culverts might go or not go, it's hard to truly provide a lot of perspective on that. But from what it feels like we see now and where we are, it does feel like we're still pretty far apart on something that would make me feel comfortable.
Andy? Thank you, Jen.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning similarly that, if this road's going to get increased use as a barn's built, that I'd want to see it out of the wetland. And again, we'd want to see some detail. And I think it was brought up earlier, there's plenty of invasive species out there. I think there's room for some remediation, and some detail on that would be great.
Okay. Brendan? Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, I probably don't have a lot more to add. I do share a lot of the same views and concerns of the other commissioners. So, yeah, I'm probably leave it at that.
Okay. Amy, do you want to? Thanks, Brendan. Do you want to jump?
Well, I guess that I agree with what the commissioners also say. In art too, that we're looking for a project that meets the performance standards, and we're a little far apart on a couple of issues. Definitely building up the road would be one, in the replication. So that's great if they want to put it on the table. We would be looking forward to see something that meets the performance standards, though. And I know, Frank, that we do have abutters in the audience that are going to want to share their opinions. So
Sure. Okay. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this? You could put your hand up, please.
Mom's iPad, I'm trying to, yep, you're on Mom's iPad.
you. Yes, how you doing? This is Mr. Pants.
Oh, okay.
I've been sitting here and I've been listening to everybody. And I just want to let everybody know in the commission that we have addressed, and we did try to put a road up out of the wetlands, but we were told by conservation, not actually conservation, by Amy, that it would probably be better to use the cart path. So that is the reason why we're doing that.
North of.
And using the cart path. The reason we're keeping it low is because we don't want to disrupt the area. I mean, if you guys want a road, like a real road out there, we will do that. If that's what you guys are asking, just let me know that that's what you want. Okay?
Okay. Is that your comments for right now, Joe?
Oh, I just muted him.
Oh.
Frank, this is Bill Arbor. I will comment on a couple things, but after whatever the interested parties talk.
Okay.
Do we have? Yes, James W. is raising their hands.
Okay, and whoever comes on wants to give us their name and address, please. James?
Hi, this is Marsha Watson. I live at 156 Maple Street, and I know this isn't necessarily Conservation Commission issues, but because of previous presentations that were based on a farming background, I am a bit concerned that even though it's stated that the path is not going to be used commercially, if it isn't, why does he need the barn the size of something that you would put a large stable in if he's not doing some kind of commercial issues?
Bill or Gary?
Bill.
I mean, I don't deny him the ability to have the barn. I'm just saying that it worries me that it will be turned into, once it's approved, into a commercial venture that will hurt the wetlands even more.
Mrs. Watson, maybe we can get one of the applicants' representatives to answer your question on the building. Give me a second.
I can speak to that. Joe and Christine Pants, this is the barn they want. Everyone's entitled to this. It's not the structure of this or whatever isn't jurisdictional to the commission to begin with. And again, we have the presentation in front of us. They're not seeking commercial permits or anything else along those lines. As far as, I understand there might be some titular concern here, but what I wanted to circle back on, I think we want to focus on, but a couple of things you'd like to out of this meeting is, one, and I don't think we're far apart at all. In other words, you have to see a replication plan. You got to see that it meets your concerns. Two, we have to put some culverts to allow the flow underneath this. So I think we have that's done. But one of the important things is, assuming we can address those issues to the commission's satisfaction, which I'm sure we can, according to Chris and Gary, then I don't see any other issues here. And that's what I know. Obviously, you have to have the plan in front of you to see it and to vet it. I get that. But this really is the least intrusive way, to go forward after many, many iterations of this. And again, if we're looking for less disturbance, and as we said, hey, we remove some invasive species, we'll do the replication area. I think this is good. One of the questions, though, is to get into, but let's one narrow focus. And the narrow focus is, according to Art, do you raise the level and make this a more substantial, or do you try to minimize it? Our druthers are to try to minimize that for a number of issues. It's an existing condition now. So whether water sheets over it now or it's going to sheet less so, it's an improved condition from what exists there presently. And so that's what I don't understand, is this isn't a situation. This is an ancient way that's been there for a long time. And as what Doug was saying, is I'm not sure where it went or whatever. For all I know, it went over to Norwell in the North River at some juncture back in colonial times.
So, Bill, what I'm trying to get at the moment is to address concerns of the abutters, and I'm not going to disagree with you that the owner, the applicant doesn't have the right to build something, but I think what's important is, we the commission members, because of this COVID situation and whatnot, normally would have a meeting room where lots of things could be pointed out and explained. It would be a little bit easier for folks to see that. In this case, we, the commission, have made several site visits, have had discussions with the applicant, with their engineer, some of us more than others, to try to get our head around what they're trying to do here. And so Mrs. Watson's question was, is this sort of a commercial application? And it's been explained to me that is not the case. They want to have a farm type building here. They're trying to put this property into an agricultural use, and but perhaps that question could be answered by someone as to just what the building will be used for. And I realize what the commission's purview is the roadway and the wetlands crossing and the resource areas, but perhaps with a little bit of light on what is happening here, it might make sense of some of the other aspects of the project as well.
All right, Frank, 30, if I may respond to it, 30 by 60 is really not that large a barn. If this were a commercial application, I mean, you'd be looking at 70, you'd be trying to look for 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, not 1,800 square feet. 1,800 square feet is very, very small when you compare it to other commercial applications. It's kind of, I understand her fears, but I think that's all they are. There's no way that this is going to be a commercial application. It's just not large enough. It just doesn't have the space to be able to be a commercial application. Nor are we trying to improve the road going into it to be utilized for a commercial application. This is specifically only for personal use, and that's really what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
156. She must be the one way out back, down by the river, down by the Third Herring Brook. I can't remember where she's located.
Mrs. Watson, have I get that right?
Is she way out back on the other side of the easement?
I don't know.
And if you can too, I'll answer Doug. It goes parallel to the cart path. Actually turns and runs parallel to the easement, but I don't know. It kind of dies somewhere up in there. I don't know if it actually crossed the stream or if there was a stream crossing or not over First Herring Brook.
Okay.
Frank, I have
Hi.
Amy Rojic. I'm gonna.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know whether you were still trying to figure out where 156
Yes, I would like to know that.
was.
Can you tell us that?
Yes, the crossroad between Old Oaken Bucket and First Parish, if you're headed towards Old Oaken Bucket and Maple, if you're headed towards First Parish, it's the second house down on the left-hand side, across from the lady that has the barn with the sheep.
Got it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
I know where she is.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
And my big
Go ahead. Want to let her finish?
I think she's muted again.
My big issue, I'm sorry, is traffic on this street, which is horrible already. And if it turned into something that, was going to be used where all kinds of people were coming and going in and out of the place, it would make it 10 times worse. That's my concern.
Okay. I think you've heard the applicant answer that it's not a commercial application, and I don't see that as an issue for this piece, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another person. Amy?
Yeah, this is Amy Rojic. I'm from 112 Maple Street, so this obviously directly impacts our property. And I don't think we answered Marcia's question, actually. I did not hear what the definitive use of this property is for. And I agree that in prior presentations that we've been privy to, there's been a whole bunch of different uses for this property being considered, some of which was commercial. So I'm still remain unsure as to what the ultimate project is that requires a 3,600 square foot barn, because it's a 2-story structure, not just one. And it has a significant gravel area behind it that appears to go directly to the property line, which would require complete deforestation between the two properties. So I'd really like to understand the scope and magnitude. I mean, we're very concerned about water and everything else happening here, but it seems to me there's a significant amount of vegetation and other things that are being considered for disruption here. So I'd like answers to those questions, frankly.
So, Amy, this is a wetlands hearing or
Okay.
Conservation Commission, and we're reviewing their wetlands application. And I want you to have some information on this, and if it can be brief, but our purview is the disturbance of the wetlands and this project. But again, maybe the applicant can, I've already heard the attorney explain this and the engineer a little bit, but if it can be very brief, we'll take one more explanation of what the applicant's trying to use this building for.
Frank, the gravel areas on both sides of the barn are specifically to allow him to get his tractor to be able to drive it from one side to the next, so he has the ability to drive through. So that's why you have the 2 gravel areas. And that's the primary reason. He just wants to have the ability to drive through. So he can maintain his barn, he can store it out of the weather. Because right now it's in a lean-to up against the other shed. He'd like to be able to store it out. And I'd like to be able to pick up a couple more pieces of equipment in association with the agricultural use. But right now he's got no place. You can't leave it exposed to the weather, and he'd like to have a place to store it. So that's going to be the primary use of this barn.
Okay. And And the agricultural use of this property will be, this is a question. Is it forestry management? I'm just trying to.
Right now, he's well, he was trying to grow pumpkins, but the deer finished those off in the front. The deer came in and ate them all. So he's fighting the deer, he's fighting the wildlife on that. And I believe the backside is going to be forestry management.
Okay. Amy, what else can I answer, or can the applicant answer for you? Can you unmute her, Jen?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So back to your original point, Frank, about the water. So just understanding, and again, I'm not an engineer, so when looking at these plans, how is the water, since our backyard is on a significant slope down, it slopes into the stone wall that separates our properties. It's unclear to me how that will kind of prevent any pooling if there's a raised road that gets developed, how that water would be going anywhere but pooling in between our properties and creating a swamp.
Well, I don't have to jump to the engineer for this one. Your property is considerably higher than this, and to your point, there is water being shed off of your property and your neighbors onto this property, and that was a discussion when your project was developed, that sort of increased the flow onto this property. There was discussions about some drainage culverts or something that were never constructed here, but you're considerably higher than these, so I don't see that the construction on these would have any impact to your property. But again, maybe the engineer could speak to that a little bit.
No, and actually, Horsley and Witten, the review engineer for the board, actually commented on this. The real issue is that we had to make sure that the design accounted for your flow going onto it, make sure that it did not run onto our parcel and impact our stormwater management structures. So in reality, we're not going to flow to you. Frank is right. You're flowing into us, and we have design features there associated with it. In fact, we backed the gravel area off of the property line to allow us the ability to create a swale to make sure that the flow coming off your parcel runs around this development. So,
and Gary, when you comment on this, if you could just state your name first. Amy, that was Gary James, was the engineer.
Thank you.
For this project, and
I'm sorry, I thought you could see me. I'm on.
No, I can. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I guess I can't see everybody, so just for the record. But I think what Gary mentioned, Horsley Witten is another consultant. We have Art Allen on this evening. Art is the environmental consultant, but because this also has a stormwater parcel, the stormwater is being reviewed by a consultant, Horsley Witten. So the stormwater is being reviewed as well, Amy. Do we have anybody else? Or do anybody want to add another comment?
The Dolans want to speak.
Okay.
Dolans are on.
Maureen Dolan.
Hello, Dolans.
They're on. They're not muted. They're muted.
I think we can hear you. Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Dolan, we can hear you. Oh. Maybe it's on your end. Can we jump to somebody else for a minute and then get back to that one? Anybody else to comment?
I don't see any other hands that are raised. I'm unmuting Dolan again.
Diana.
It looks like on my screen they're still
Oh,
muted.
No, they're unmuted on my screen.
Okay.
Ah. Yeah, perhaps, Dolan's, if you can hear us, maybe you could telephone in. There's the number on the agenda. Because we can't hear you.
Okay.
We can see you.
While we're waiting for that, is there any other any commission members want to add anything from what they've heard? Amy, do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm good, Frank.
So,
Frank?
Yes, Doug.
I was muted there. I did have a question for Gary.
Sure.
James. Gary, this proposed driveway, so you're going to sub-excavate that, and you're going to replace that with filter fabric and a stone fill. And so I would imagine that that's going to allow a certain amount of flow to flow underneath the driveway. That's the intent there, correct?
That's correct.
Is there a way to quantify that? That might be something that might help the commission if you know how much water will be allowed to go under there, and how well would that maintain itself? Because if it's a small flow coming off there now, I'm just wondering if the culverts you're talking about could be replaced somewhere near that same grade, even if they're small and there's multiple ones or something. I'm just wondering if there's a way for you to quantify that flow and how much water that's letting it go, because it's not that big of an area of wetland area that's flowing under there. So
No,
I'm just wondering how much that handles in a normal situation. You know, in with respect to, you know, normal quantifying measures for any other kind of stormwater mitigation, if there's a way to calculate a structure like that. And if so, if you could, maybe the commissioner that would like to see something like that, that would help.
What I can do, Doug, is I'll send the surveyor back out there, and I'll get a lot more detail in terms of because right now, I mean, admittedly, I only have spot shots I think they're 50 feet on the center line. So I'm just connecting the dots. But I'm going to send Bill out there and get a little bit more survey in these crossings, and I'll come up with the detail. I did do the calculations in terms of what's coming off of the Dolan, but what's coming off of the two parcels, because that's, 90% of the flow that's coming across this is what's coming off of the parcels above us.
Sure.
So I do have the calculations, because I obviously did it when we were contemplating the driveway along the property line, because we were going to have to control that flow coming off of the upgrading parcels. So I can do that, and I'll give you a better detail. As we stated, it appears as if, based on the recommendations of Art Moore, I have to admit, I don't agree with that, but okay. I'll admit that I'm going to have to do something. So I can quantify, and I can give you some much better details on terms of what we're going to do in terms of the multiple culverts and what the capability is.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I just unmuted a phone number. I did.
Okay, we have a call from 781-789-7656.
And I'm asking to unmute, but nothing is happening. Does somebody else want to give it a try? Jen. Here we go.
Okay, I think we can hear you.
I'm asking to unmute, but they are not unmuting. Me too. Hello? Well, I am thinking this is the Dolans calling in on their cell phone.
Yes.
And clearly we're not going to close this tonight. So if for some technological reason we can't connect with the Dolans, if they could call the office or email us concerns, we'll make sure that we get them out to the commission and applicant for a response. And we apologize about technology, although I keep hearing somebody try to cut in. Hello?
See if we can't get those comments. And we'll distribute them to the commission members.
Yeah, for anybody that hasn't been able to get in on this call or would like to comment and needs to get their comments out to the commission, just please send them to the conservation office and we'll get them out.
And if it's simpler, just call the office.
Yes.
And speak directly with Jen Smith and she can get those notes out to us. Apologize.
Bill Arber, at some point I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just one of the things I just asked the commission, and I know it's been said in a few places, to pull this together is, I know there is some water coming over this. Gary and Chris are gonna look at putting culverts in to do this, but remember, the genesis of this water are properties north of us who didn't do the proper stormwater control that was required by the town. Now, I'm not saying that the current owners, they had nothing to do with it. That's the way stuff happened. So the fact that we're dealing with substantially a lot of this is something that, like in other words, if we put a big swale up along the boundary line, we can get rid of all the water. But amongst other things, as Chris was saying, is, hey, this nourishes your wetlands. So that's okay. So we're trying to address this the best we can. I think with the replication and eradication of some invasive species in that area, I think that goes a long way. And exactly as Gary was saying at the outset of this, we're not looking to make a substantial, raised road here because it is for personal use. That's all. And so the one thing I would like the consensus of the commission, assuming that we do the replication, assuming that we get some culverts under here that are adequate to deal with this. I just like the consensus of the commission that this is a better approach as opposed to cutting and filling a big way along the northerly boundary line. Because before we already did the engineering on that one, but I just want to make sure we get back to the next meeting, we're down to the, in other words, to address certain, very focused concerns, that's all. Because I think other than those issues, I think we've hit substantially all the issues the commission has. And correct me if I'm wrong. If there's something else that I just want to make sure we're prepared at the next meeting, that's all. Frank, you're muted. I can't hear what you're saying.
There's been a lot discussed here since the commission members had a chance to voice their concerns. Does anyone else want to add anything to this at this time? So, go ahead.
Chime in, Frank. I would just say it's hard to say that all the concerns have necessarily been addressed when we haven't seen a revised version of plans. So there could be new things that would arise after seeing how the plans come together.
Okay. So I think, thanks, Jen. We've looked at a couple of different alternatives, and what the applicant has come before the commission and asked, that they did two versions of getting out to this barn, using the cart path and then a new road. Doug raised some concerns about maybe a third alternative of a road somewhere with less disturbance, but there's still quite a bit to be done. Any other road would require cutting all the way through, which is what I think they've tried to avoid. I think there's also an aesthetic component that it seems to me that the applicant's trying to achieve. It's not just a matter of cost. It's that this is not a large scale road, and I think of our own access roads that we built going into some of our properties recently to handle a lot more traffic. This is to enable farm vehicles, trucks, whatever, to get back to this farm building. And so I understand the applicant's desire to not overbuild this, but at the same time, it has to be in compliance. I do think we need to see the wetlands replication area. I think that it's been made clear that there has to be some sort of culverts or connection crossing if they can come up with something that works for the commission and the consultants. If we can find some compromise on that. And then I think there's going to be a little time before that can happen. Gary, how much time would you need to put together the plans? I'm just wondering when those plans could be submitted and we'll have a chance to have them reviewed so we can continue this meeting.
Chris Newhall is this Gary James again. Chris Newhall is the one who's got the schedule issues, and unfortunately, Chris would be doing the replication. Obviously, the plantings associated with the replication. From an engineering standpoint, it's not going to take me very long to do it. But I would say because Chris is unavailable till the end of next week, so it's going to take us 2 weeks to get everything prepared and into you.
And then that's got to be reviewed by Art and Horsley Witten.
Yes, correct.
So
Right. So Frank, let me just jump in here. So our next possible opportunity would be September 21st, or we could go to the first October meeting.
I think the 20th.
Which I don't have that date handy, but.
If September 21st is the next date after the end of the month, we'd very much like to be on that. And if we don't have everything into you, have a chance to be reviewed, inspected, and whatever, and we're getting close to that, then we will deal with that. But Gary and Chris, you have a high degree of confidence that we can get this in and get it reviewed for that meeting?
The engineering aspect is very minor. It's not a big test because pretty much we've addressed all of the issues associated with stormwater management structures. So all we're really doing is looking specifically at this 1,200 square feet of crossing. That's all I'm looking at. So it's just going to be it's going to be another sheet in the set, but it's just going to be a set of details.
Okay.
No, the big thing is Chris. I know Chris Newhall has got some real schedule issues, so he's just not available.
But and I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, Gary, everything. I think that there's two components here. One is the replication area that I understand Chris is working on, but two is dealing with the culverting and the other things which Doug Arberg asked that you review. That's something that you're not, Chris doesn't have involvement with, correct?
No, that's right. That's something
Right.
it would be me all by myself. So,
Okay,
and,
so-
and that I can handle. I can have by the end of next week.
Okay, so let's get that and get it over to Horsley Witten and for your guys to review. So we'll knock that down and let's get the replication stuff in as soon as Chris has it. And even to the extent if the replication area is sufficient for the commission and you want to condition this as to the plant set, you can do that.
I think Chris would like to comment from what I can see. Chris Newhall. Can you unmute him?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, this is Chris Newhall. The end of next week for the wetland replication plan is not an issue for me. This week is busy for me though, but that, so timetables that Gary offered up is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you continue to September 21st and see how it goes?
Can I get a motion to continue this meeting? And the other, before we do that, if any commission members have any other concerns, things they want to add to this, if they could email Amy or Jen so that we can get that information on to the applicant, I think would be helpful.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue to September 21st.
I'll take a second.
Second, Doug.
Okay, so all in favor, Richard?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay,
Okay,
thank you
thank
all
you.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do we have on our agenda after this?
You can go to trail rules and regs if you'd like.
Jen Foley, do you want to speak to the trails, rules, and regulations?
Sure. So I will share. I'm going to stop your screen sharing. Okay, Jen? Oh, no, you pulled it up. Great. Okay. So the rules are what we've got here are kind of cover two bases, but really let's just pay attention to the bottom rules where it says full rules. The vision is that the Trails group has been working with one of our members, Ernie, who is has a design business and is working on our kiosk design. As part of that, we'd like to have the rules in place so that they can be displayed on the kiosk, as well as just published and available on our town website. So the part where we have these like front kiosks are just the top three rules that we want to make sure are on the front of the kiosk and visibly easy to see for everybody. Whereas the full set of rules are, will be on the back of the kiosk as well as on our website and published. So what we've tried to do here is cover what we've seen on other state and other town websites that they've been using. So what we have are conservation property is open sunrise to sunset. Dogs must be leashed and waste picked up. No motorized vehicles of any kind. No unauthorized trail clearing or trail maintenance. Valid Massachusetts hunting license required for hunting in approved conservation areas and follow related town bylaws. That's less concise than all of the other ones, but trying to cover something there. And I think we may need to come back to that one. But number 6, no alcohol or drugs. Number 7, no fires. 8, stay on the trails. 9, respect wildlife bordering private property and people you meet on the trails. 10, remove nothing, leave nothing behind. There might be more that we need reflected on our conservation website in general, but this is kind of what we're trying to put out to the public.
I think it looks pretty solid, Jen.
Great. Andy, what do you think? You have a lot of experience in this area.
Well, looks thorough to me.
You're our professional.
Did you say there was more on that hunting thing that you wanted to add? I mean, that was another question. Otherwise, it looks thorough.
That's the only one that I kind of had to wordsmith a bit. Everything else is rather straightforward.
Yep.
So that was the one that I thought there might be some more discussion on.
Do we have areas that allow hunting?
Most,
Yes.
you can hunt west of
Is it-
3A.
Are you talking like duck hunting in marshland, or are you like?
Well, there's duck hunting in marshland, which could be on the east side of 3A, but on the west side of 3A, there's mostly either deer hunting, turkey, upland game.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and we try to post some of that so that people are aware that there could be hunters in the woods. So we clearly know the seasons. One of the things that I had read, oftentimes hunters want to access the property before sunrise, and they could be leaving the property after sunset. So we wanted to have some provision for that. Also, people that are training dogs or something like that, they may be off leash, but they have other means of controls for the dog. So there's a few things I think like that Jen, whether we want to put all that in there or whether it just wants to be on our website or in our rules, whether it all needs to be on the sign. But I had been on some property in Rhode Island and picked up some verbiage on a couple of their areas, just looking to pick up some of that information. We had a pretty substantial study done by the Conway School, and then we had gotten some foresters in that had made some recommendations on allowing certain things. So we've spent quite a bit of time on that, but it is something that always comes up, and we want to make sure that folks are well aware of what's happening on the property for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's birders or people that want to use the property in the evening for, say, owls or something else. So we want to make sure that we can have some provisions that people that are doing those sort of activities can be accommodated.
Gotcha. It looks good.
But I think Jen's
Great.
point, we've been spending some time on how to set up the kiosks with the Trails group, and Jen and Ernie has been a great help in trying to kind of make things as clear as possible, but at the same time cover the rules and regulations so that if we have any issues, they can be enforced. Sadly, we already had a small little bit of vandalism on one of the trails, but it was actually nice, and a neighbor that uses the trail cleaned it all up before we even had to do anything about it. So what we're really looking to do is try to get these kiosks up and signs up so that we can really open these places up. In terms of timing for the open space areas, I was meeting with a scout just yesterday, and he's got all his applications in so he can install the kiosks fairly soon. They've all been made and they've been waiting installation, and then hopefully we can get onto our bridge and a couple of other things that need to get done so we can wrap up these new trails and parking areas.
Can you open them soon, Frank?
Yep.
soon, please.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, Frank, I would say I think keeping the rules simple like this is probably better. And the people who want to go out for owls or hunting before, it's probably a limited number they can call and ask, or we could grant permission if needed or something. But
okay,
that'd be that's how I've handled it in the past.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Andy that these are for the general public. The real birders and stuff like that. They're not going to destroy anything. And
well, if we can give them permission so that, say, they're in there and then
somebody sees them, they have our permission. But just keep it very general. And just to answer Doug on the hunting, there are signs at the entrances to the trails that the Rod and Gun Club put up years ago with the rules and regs for hunting on our property. So it isn't as though you're going in there blind. And there has been historically, Frank can tell you, since I've been in Scituate, which we moved here in 1950 from Hingham, there's been hunting out there, and knock on wood, everything's been good.
Okay. Jen, I think these are great. Anybody else?
I think they're great too. I think we're looking for a motion. Actually, if this is what you're proposing to actually put on the kiosk or be the new conservation rules and regs. I mean,
Somebody want to make a motion to accept these?
I make a motion to accept the rules as presented for the trails.
Second, Doug?
Okay. All in favor? Richard?
Absolutely.
Doug?
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Andy, well, I got you right here. Do you have the conceptual plans for the Driftwood Park?
Yes, I do. I'll bring them back this week.
Well, you know what? Maybe you and I could catch up. There's been some discussion about how some of that might get funded. So when I try to give you a call, see if we can just discuss that a little bit.
yeah, we're looking specifically for any design for the crossing bridges.
Yeah, well, there's one for the one over the Herring Brook, not for the dike.
Not for the dike. Yeah, we were hoping for maybe for something for the dike, but
That means that Jen and Amy got to go through all the MBTA files.
yeah. I had a quick update. This is pretty happy news on our Museum Beach Nourishment project. And as of today, we were down to 6 items.
Wow.
One being a moored sailboat. And then another, the gangway, which you can kind of see in this picture.
Is that still there?
Yep. And then we've got some, like a pretty large canoe and other, I don't know, that one kayak on the beach looks like it's probably seaworthy, but a couple of random items, but that's pretty good. 6 items plus the gangway.
Down from what, 75?
At least, yeah.
So when does this get removed?
We're working on it. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with the moored sailboat. Like, I think I need to talk to Steve Moan about that one.
Why? It doesn't belong there. Take it to the dump.
It hasn't been there though. That's
new.
No, it doesn't belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not saying it belongs there, but it hasn't been there.
So you know what? It could be gone tomorrow. It could. Maybe it was just a weekend thing, you know. But I think that the most of the stuff that's there left behind now is really, it's if it belongs to someone and they haven't retrieved it, then I believe it will be going to the transfer station.
Well, I hope so.
Yes, as soon as we can get DPW out there.
Don't follow through with it being removed, the stuff will arrive there again.
Right. Well, one of the things that I like to come up with some wording for permanent signage to put where the entrance is, just
Yeah,
so to remind people that you're not supposed to store on the
No
dunes.
private
And then,
property left on beach. End of story.
yeah.
Sweet and simple.
And we'll be cordoning off the areas for the Nourishment project soon.
Well, it already looks better without all that.
Oh my God, it looks
garbage.
great. It's beautiful. It looks beautiful.
And it should stay that way.
All right.
You laugh, Frank. You laugh. Go ahead.
It's not the beach I'm laughing at.
I know.
Well, you know, this is, you know what? I've been here now long enough to, as I drove up to Minot and I was checking on the culvert projects and the Musquashkett project and stuff like that. But anyways, and then I was along the beach and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the time of year when the seaweed comes in. So we'll be getting the seaweed calls this week because it's going to start to smell, right? So then, and it's like every August, just about this time is when those calls come in. It can be a little bit of a nuisance.
Oh, well. Can't have it all.
Can I do the minutes, Frank?
Can I just ask Amy one question?
Yep.
Did the town have to remove any of the boats, or did people take them all away themselves?
From my knowledge, people came and got their stuff. Yep.
Great. Awesome. Penny, would you like to do the minutes?
I certainly would. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as written for July 14th and July 20th.
Richard, second.
All in favor? Richard?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Frank, yes. How's that?
Very good.
Anybody else?
Just in time to go watch the Bruins.
I gotta go.
They don't have a goalie.
I'm going home. Goodbye.
You are home.
Oh, yes, I am. But I have to go chase the bunny.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I make a motion,
to adjourn.
That's what we have to do.
All right. Do I have a second on that?
Second. Doug.
All right. All in favor? Richard?
Absolutely.
Doug?
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Jen? We already lost her.
Jen already went home.
Yeah. Andy?
Jen was having
Brendan?
connection problems.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks,
You all have a
everybody.
nice week. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Take care.